Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by just acknowledging where we are in time.
Mhm.
It feels like we're standing on the other side of a very long, very dark tunnel, squinting a little bit at the light.
That's a really good way to put it.
It's Wednesday, January 28th, 2026.
Mhm.
And to really understand the moment we are in right now, I want you to, if you can, just close your eyes for a second and visualize a small physical object.
An object that really, for the last couple of years, has been completely unavoidable.
Completely. It's something that if you were walking down the street in Tel Aviv or, I don't know, New York or Miami or London any time in the last 2 years, you absolutely saw it.
It became part of the visual landscape of
Yeah.
a post-2023 world. You saw them on grandmothers in the supermarket. You saw them on teenagers at music festivals. You saw them on professors in, lecture halls. They were everywhere.
Exactly. I'm talking about the dog tags. But we have to be really specific here. We aren't talking about standard military issue ID tags that soldiers wear under their fatigue.
Oh, no, these were different.
These were different. They were public. They were-
Uh-huh.
yeah, everywhere. Rectangular pieces of metal, usually hanging on a simple ball chain, that carried a very specific, very heavy weight to them.
A tangible weight,
Yeah.
but also a symbolic one.
A huge symbolic weight. They had an inscription that became a mantra, "Bring them home now." And often, right below that, a phrase in Hebrew,
Halev sheli shavui biaza.
which translates to, "My heart is held captive in Gaza."
My heart is held captive. Just think about that phrase. It's not, I am worried about Gaza or I stand with the hostages. It's an internal state.
It's so visceral. My heart is captive. And today we are doing something a little different. We're not just looking at the news headlines or the military analysis.
Right.
We are basing this entire deep dive on a really profound piece of scholarship by Dr. Iqbal. He's a professor of religious studies and the co-founder of Miami Interfaith. He wrote this incredible essay that analyzes the event that just happened this week, the return of the final hostage, but he strips away the military strategy, the politics, the polling data,
All the usual noise.
all of it. And he looks at it entirely through the lens of theology.
And Dr. Iqbal is such a fascinating guide for this journey because he says right up front, he's an outsider. He's not Jewish. He's a Muslim scholar.
Right.
And he writes about organizing these interfaith dialogue sessions with his colleague, Rabbi Jamie Aklepi, right after October 7, 2023. He describes walking into these rooms and just seeing these tags on almost everyone's neck.
And he admits he was confused.
Totally. He just didn't get it at first.
Which, if you think about it, is a really fair reaction for someone outside that specific cultural bubble. To an outsider, they look like political merchandise.
Or solidarity jewelry.
yeah,
Huh?
maybe even, a statement of militarism.
Right. That's the first place your mind goes. You see a metal tag you associate with the army, you think war support.
But Dr. Iqbal argues that if you actually stop and study the theology, if you look at the history of symbols in Judaism, these weren't political statements at all. They were a response to a specific historical trauma.
The collective trauma.
A collective trauma that has been just leading for 2 years and just came to a resolution 2 days ago on January 26, 2026.
The day the clock stopped.
The day the clock literally stopped.
I saw the footage online. It was eerie.
For our listeners who haven't been glued to the live feeds for the last 48 hours, let's just set the scene in Tel Aviv. For 2 years, this place, Hostages Square, has been the epicenter of this national grief.
A public wound.
Totally. And it has been dominated by this massive digital clock. It wasn't telling the time of day, it was counting up.
Seconds, minutes, hours, days.
Since the abduction on October 7, it was this relentless ticking reminder of absence. And 2 days ago, after 843 days, the power was cut. The screen went dark.
Because the remains of Staff Sergeant Rand Javili were returned to Israel.
Rand Reilly, he was 24 years old, a police officer who was killed defending Kibbutz Illumim way back on that very first day of the war.
On October 7th itself.
Yes. And for 843 days, his body was the last question mark, the last hostage held by Hamas, the final piece of the puzzle.
I think we need to just sit with that number for a moment. 843 days.
It's staggering.
It's more than 2 years. Dr. Iqbal calls it an eternity of agonizing uncertainty. Think about what that does to a family, to a community.
I can't even imagine.
Waking up every single morning for 843 days, not knowing if your son, your brother, is alive or dead, whole or in pieces, buried or abandoned somewhere. It's a psychological torture.
So here's the mission for this deep dive. The
Yeah.
headline on CNN or the BBC is simply, "Body Returned," but the story, the real story, is why it matters so much.
The why is everything here.
Why did an entire nation hold its breath for 2 years over a corpse? Why did people halfway around the world wear those metal tags?
Right.
Dr. Iqbal's thesis is that this obsession with the body, this refusal to leave the dead behind, isn't just a quirk of Israeli society or Jewish culture.
Hmm.
He argues that this theology of death, and specifically the shared reverence for the body, might actually be the secret key to peace between Jews and Muslims.
Which sounds completely backwards when you say it out loud. It's so counterintuitive.
Totally backwards. You'd think peace comes from the living, from negotiations, from planning for the future.
But his argument is that the way Jews and Muslims treat the dead is a shared language. It's a frequency they both hear, even when the politics are jamming every other signal. It's this one place of common ground.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the dog tags. Dr. Iqbal calls the phenomenon of wearing them a transformation of consciousness. That feels like a big claim for a piece of metal on a chain. What does he mean by that?
It's a huge claim, but I think he backs it up. He's pointing out a shift that happened in the Jewish world. To understand why those tags became so ubiquitous, so necessary feeling, you have to understand the Holocaust.
Right.
But not the way we usually learn it in history, class dates, battles, numbers. He's talking about the specific mechanism of the Holocaust, the psychological machinery of it.
He uses a term in the essay that I hadn't encountered before, and it really stopped me in my tracks. Necrocide.
It's a chilling word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Necrocide.
It is. Break that down for us. What distinguishes necrocide from genocide? Because they sound related, obviously.
They're absolutely related, but necrocide is a specific subset of genocide. So genocide is the killing of a people, the destruction of a group, a genos.
The people themselves.
Yes. Necrocide is the killing of death itself. It is the systematic desecration and annihilation of the body. Think about the Nazi infrastructure. Yes, they used gas chambers to kill, but the gas chambers were followed immediately by the crematoria, the industrial ovens,
The smoke.
the smoke, the ash. The goal of the Nazis wasn't just to end a biological life. That was only step one. Step two was to erase the physical evidence that a human being ever existed,
To make them vanish.
to turn a person into nothing but particulate matter, to scatter them so there was no grave, no marker, no place for a child to come and say Kaddish, the mourner's prayer. It was the ultimate erasure. It's not enough to kill you. I have to annihilate your death.
So the trauma isn't just we died. The trauma is we were discarded. We were treated as waste.
Precisely. The crematorium became the ultimate symbol of Jewish vulnerability. It meant you were unburied. You were abandoned. Your physical form, the only thing you leave behind, was just gone.
And Dr. Iqbal argues that the phrase never again, which we hear all the time,
All the time.
is usually interpreted as never again will we be slaughtered. But deep in the theology, deep in the subconscious, it means something else.
It means never again will Jewish bodies be abandoned. That's the vow. That is the core trauma that October 7th reopened, the fear of being left behind, unburied, unaccounted for.
That recontextualizes everything for me, honestly. When I saw those tags in 2024 or 2025, I just thought about solidarity with the living hostages. But you're saying it was a theological shield.
It was a reaction to the threat of erasure. It's a deep, almost instinctual response. And it links directly to this central concept in Jewish law called kavod hamet.
Kavod hamet. That translates to dignity of the dead.
Right. And this is where the theology gets really beautiful and really specific. It's not just a nice idea.
Is that a vague feeling?
Not at all. In Jewish theology, the body isn't just a shell. It's not like a banana peel you throw away once you eat the fruit. The body is a vessel. It housed the Tselem Elohim, the image of God.
The divine spark.
The divine spark. So the body itself is sacred property. You don't own it. You're just its guardian. And because it's sacred, you don't burn it. You don't discard it. You don't leave it in a field. You return it to the earth intact with reverence.
And there are specific rituals for this, right? It's not just a general feeling of respect. It's codified law.
Oh, it's incredibly specific. The laws are detailed and ancient. And Dr. Iqbal highlights a few rituals that really, I think, explain the dog tags perfectly. Let's start with the practice of Shemira.
Shemira, okay, meaning guarding or watching.
Yes, both. Guarding. From the moment a Jewish person dies until they are buried, they are never left alone. Not for a minute.
You mean practically speaking, like in the morgue, in the funeral home. Someone is physically in the room.
Literally in the room. 24 hours a day. There are volunteers from the community. They're called Shomrim guards. They organize shifts. They sit with the body, often reciting psalms.
Why? What's the theological idea behind that?
The theological idea is that the soul is in transition. It's confused, it's vulnerable, it's hovering between worlds. It doesn't quite know where it is.
So you're keeping it company.
You do not abandon your brother in the dark. You stay with them until they are safely in the earth. It's an act of profound community care.
That is, honestly, that's incredibly tender. The idea that you wouldn't let someone be lonely even in death.
It is. It's beautiful. And then you have Tahara, the ritual washing. This is another key piece. This isn't done by a mortician or a medical examiner in a clinical setting.
Right.
It's done by the Chevra Kadisha, which translates to the Holy Society. These are trained volunteers for the community, men for men, women for women.
So it's peers from your own community.
Yes. Your neighbors, the person you see in the synagogue, they come and they perform this ritual. They wash the body, they cleanse it, they dress it in simple white shrouds. And get this, the source mentions that before they close the coffin, they ask the corpse for forgiveness.
For forgiveness? Forgiveness for what?
Yes, they apologize in case they moved the body too roughly, in case their thoughts weren't pure enough during the ritual, in case they weren't gentle enough in handling this sacred vessel.
Wow, that is the level of reverence we are talking about.
The body is treated with absolute sanctity, even after life has left it.
More than sanctity, it's treated like a guest of honor on its final journey.
So let's bring this all the way back to the dog tags. Dr. Iqbal makes a direct connection between Shamira, this concept of guarding, and the act of wearing the tags. How does that work?
Well, think about the situation on October 7 and the months, the years that followed. You have hostages in Gaza. Some are alive, suffering in tunnels. Some are dead, their bodies held as bargaining chips. The families cannot sit Shamira.
Of course not. They're not there.
They cannot be there to guard them. They cannot perform tahara. They cannot wash them. The body is abandoned. It is the nightmare scenario of the crematorium all over again. The ultimate vulnerability.
So the community steps in.
The community becomes the shamrim. That's the argument. By wearing that metal tag against your skin, by feeling the cold weight of it every single day when you wake up and when you go to sleep, you are performing a continuous vigil.
It's a remote guarding.
It's a remote guarding. You are saying physically, with your own body, I am not leaving you alone. Even if I can't be there, I am carrying you. My heart is captive with you.
That gives me chills. It transforms the object from a political slogan, which is how I first saw it, into a religious ritual. It's almost like a prayer you wear.
It's a spiritual refusal to abandon the captive. It's a constant physical reminder of an unfulfilled religious obligation. And look at the inscription again. My heart is held captive.
Right.
That's not just poetry. It's not a metaphor. It ties directly into another major concept, Pidyon Shwim.
Pidyon Shvum, the redemption of captives. I've heard that phrase used a lot in the news coverage. That's a commandment, right? A mitzvah.
It's one of the highest mitzvot in Judaism. It's considered a massive obligation. Maimonides, the great medieval scholar, laid this out very clearly.
What did he say?
He said that if you have money collected to build a brand new synagogue, a holy house of God, the center of community life, and you hear that a member of your community has been taken captive,
You have to divert the funds.
you are obligated to take that money, all of it, and use it to buy that prisoner's freedom instead. The human body takes precedence over the holy building. You pause the prayer to free the captive.
That puts the last 2 years into perspective. The entire society was oriented around this specific commandment. The protests, the international diplomacy, the negotiations, the obsession, it was all Pidyon Shvum in action.
It was a whole nation trying to fulfill the highest commandment. And visually, Dr. Iqbal points out something very sharp that I hadn't considered. The dog tags. They recall the numbers tattooed on arms in the concentration camps.
Yeah. I can see that. The marking of the body.
It's a marking of the body, but this time it's voluntary. It's
Yeah.
chosen. It's a symbol of commitment rather than a symbol of dehumanization. It's saying, you marked us to erase us. I will mark myself so I don't forget you. It's an act of defiance against that history.
So we have this intense, historically loaded, deeply felt Jewish theology driving the need to get Rand Vilibe back. But here's where the story shifts, and where I think Dr. Iqbal's perspective is most valuable.
This is the pivot point of the essay.
He isn't writing this from inside the synagogue. He's a Muslim scholar, and he takes us into that dialogue room in Miami.
Yes, the Miami Interfaith Sessions.
where?
This is where it gets really interesting. So you have Jewish participants wearing the tags, carrying all this trauma we just discussed.
Yeah.
The Holocaust, the fear of abandonment, the sacred duty of burial.
All of that is in the room with them.
It's palpable. And across the table, you have Muslim participants from the Miami community.
And I imagine the vibe in that room was tense.
Kent is putting it mildly. The source describes a real wall going up almost immediately. The Muslim participants saw the tags, and their guard went up. They saw a military symbol.
So they
They thought, militant, pro-war, you support the bombing of Gaza, you support the IDF. They saw a political threat sitting across from them, wearing a symbol of the army they saw as an oppressor.
Which, let's be honest, is a completely logical assumption if you don't know the theology we just spent 15 minutes unpacking. If you see a military-style ID tag, you think military.
It's a perfectly logical conclusion. But then, because they were in a dialogue setting, the conversation happened. They started talking. And the Jewish participants, guided by the rabbi, didn't talk about military strategy. They didn't talk about borders or Hamas brigades.
They talked about death.
They talked about burial. They explained the fear of the crematorium. They explained Kavod Hamet, the need to return the body to the earth, the agonizing need to have a grave to visit, a place to mourn.
And that's when the light bulb went on.
That's when everything changed. Because that is a language Islam speaks fluently.
Let's look at that. Does Islam have a similar concept of the body? I know there are very strict burial laws in Islam as well.
It's remarkably similar. It's almost a mirror image in many ways. Dr. Iqbal quotes the famous verse from the Quran that said, whenever someone dies, indeed we belong to Allah, and indeed to Him we return.
Acknowledging the source and the destination.
Exactly. The theology here is that the body is a loan from God. It's a trust, an amana. You live in it, you care for it, but you don't own it. At the end of your life, you have a duty to return it to the Creator in a dignified way.
And the rituals, do they mirror the Jewish ones we talked about, like Tahara?
It's almost a perfect parallel. In Islam, you have ghusl. This is the ritual washing of the body. It has to be done with extreme tenderness, usually by family members or people of the same gender. You use water, sometimes with camphor or scented oils. It's intimate and respectful.
So again, it's the community, the family, not a stranger.
Yes. The community takes care of its own. Then you have the kafan, the wrapping of the body in simple white cloth.
Just like the Jewish shrouds. No fancy suits, no jewelry.
Exactly. Rich or poor, king or pauper, everyone gets wrapped in simple, clean white cloth. It's the ultimate equalizer in death. And then the burial must be swift, ideally within 24 hours.
Okay, I've always wondered about that, Rush. I assumed it was a practical thing. You know, hygiene in hot climates, desert traditions.
That's the secular explanation you often hear, and it might be part of it historically, but the theological reason is all about compassion for the deceased.
How so?
The belief is that the soul has separated from the body and is waiting to begin its journey back to its Creator. Delaying the burial is seen as keeping the soul in a state of distress, of limbo. It's like leaving someone waiting at a train station for days on end.
So it's an act of mercy.
It is an act of mercy to the deceased. You hurry to bury them, not to get rid of them, but to help them on their journey, to give them peace.
So when the Muslim participants in Miami heard the Jewish participants talk about the agony of waiting, of not being able to bury their dead for days, weeks, months, years,
They understood. Viscerally, in their bones. The political symbol of the dog tag just melted away.
yeah,
Underneath it, they didn't see an enemy soldier or a political opponent.
they saw a fellow human being with an unfulfilled sacred duty.
They saw a shared religious obligation. They realized, wait a minute, you aren't wearing that because you want to destroy my people. You're wearing that because you are in agony over your need to bury your brother.
That is such a powerful shift. It moves the entire conversation from my side versus your side to we're all humans who need to bury our dead. It humanizes the other through the shared experience of grief.
It creates a bridge. Dr. Iqbal calls it a moment of understanding. Now, let's be crystal clear. It didn't solve the geopolitical crisis in the Middle East.
Of course not.
It didn't stop the bombs. But in that room, amongst those specific people, it changed the temperature. It allowed them to see each other as human beings bound by similar sacred laws. It allowed them to speak.
Which brings us to the actual logistics of this return. Because while the theology is beautiful and shared in a conference room in Miami, the reality on the ground in Gaza was messy. It was violent. It was complicated.
Messy is a massive understatement.
Right.
When we talk about the return of Ranchavilli this week, we aren't talking about a simple handover at a border crossing with a handshake and a somber moment.
Yeah.
We are talking about a massive military and intelligence operation that took place inside a hostile war zone.
The source material mentions something that I found staggering, and I had to read it a few times. It says that Israeli authorities spent days exhuming approximately 250 bodies from a cemetery in Gaza just to find him.
Let's just pause on that. 250 graves opened.
250 bodies disturbed.
But
My initial reaction to reading that was shock. I mean, it feels extreme. It feels like a violation, especially knowing what we now know about the Islamic reverence for the dead and the need for a swift, undisturbed burial.
it is extreme. And from a purely secular perspective or a purely military strategy perspective, it makes zero sense. Think about the cost. Think about the resources.
Why expend those resources? Why risk soldiers' lives in a hostile zone for a body? Why generate that much anger and hatred on the other side by digging up their cemetery? It seems completely irrational.
It's totally irrational from a cost-benefit analysis.
But if you view it through the lens of necrocide and kavod hamet,
Then it becomes a religious imperative. It's not a choice. It's an obligation that supersedes almost everything else. You cannot leave the body behind. The idea of the mass grave or the unknown grave is the ultimate nightmare scenario from Jewish history.
so the state acts on it.
The state, acting on this deep subconscious theological impulse, goes to lengths that seem irrational to the outside world to recover one single body.
And it's not just about October 7th either, is it? As you mentioned, there's a pattern here in Israeli history.
A long, consistent pattern. Dr. Iqbal points to Zachary Baumel. He was an Israeli tank commander missing in action in the First Lebanon War in 1982.
Right, 1982.
His body was missing for 37 years. 37 years. Most nations would have declared him dead and moved on decades ago. Israel kept looking. They ran intelligence operations for decades. They eventually got his remains back from Syria in 2019 via Russia.
37 years.
Or Eli Cohen, the famous spy executed in Damascus in the 1960s. To this day, Israel is still trying to get his remains back. Decades of secret negotiations just to get his bones back. Time doesn't diminish the obligation. It's a debt that never expires.
But here's the twist in the Ranjavili story that Dr. Iqbal really highlights. The source says Hamas actually provided the information to find him.
This is the fascinating and deeply messy cooperation of enemies. This turn didn't happen in a vacuum. It wasn't just an Israeli raid.
No, it was part of the deal.
It was part of the ceasefire negotiations. It was entangled with the opening of the Rafah crossing, with the release of Palestinian prisoners, with aid shipments.
So it was a bargaining chip. His body was a bargaining chip.
Explicitly. And Dr. Iqbal doesn't shy away from that at all. He says both sides instrumentalized a sacred duty.
What does he mean by that?
He means Hamas used the body as leverage to prove they were serious about the ceasefire terms, or to get more prisoners released, or more aid in. Israel used the ceasefire as leverage to get the body. It was raw political currency.
That feels so cynical, using a corpse as currency.
It is cynical, it's ugly, it's the reality of war. But Dr. Iqbal finds a sliver of hope, a silver lining, even in the cynicism.
What's the silver lining there?
He argues that by using the body as currency, both sides were admitting that returning the dead matters.
How so? It feels like the opposite.
Think about it. For something to be valuable currency, both parties have to agree on its value. If Hamas didn't care about burial, they wouldn't have kept the body. They wouldn't have tracked where it was buried. They would have just left it in the field.
Okay, I see that.
And if Israel didn't care, they wouldn't have negotiated for it. So even in a war where there is almost zero good faith, where both sides view the other as inhuman monsters, they both implicitly agreed on one thing. This body is valuable. This body deserves to go home.
It's a weirdly profound agreement in the middle of a bloodbath, a shared recognition of a moral violation. We know keeping this body here isn't right.
Exactly. Both sides know that keeping a body from its grave is a transgression, and that shared knowledge, even when it's used cynically, is a tiny, tiny point of light. It's a shared moral language.
But we have to acknowledge the tragedy here, too. The deep, painful asymmetry of this whole situation. Because this story isn't just about one family getting closure.
No, and Dr. Iqbal is very clear and very insistent on this point. Ranjavili goes home, he gets a state funeral, his family sits Shiva, they have a grave to visit, they get certainty.
Which is invaluable.
Invaluable. Meanwhile, the operation to find him involved digging up a cemetery and disturbing 250 Palestinian graves. And at the same time, thousands of Palestinians are still missing under the rubble in Gaza. Their families have no closure. They don't have a body to wash. They don't have a grave to visit. Their cemeteries may have been bulldozed or disturbed. The inequality of who gets to mourn is just. It's stark.
It's a gut-wrenching contrast. One family gets certainty, while thousands get more chaos and desecration.
And that tension, that painful asymmetry, leads us to the central paradox of this entire deep dive. The question that really haunts this whole episode.
The question of the living versus the dead.
Exactly. Dr. Iqbal poses this provocative, deeply uncomfortable question. If we invest this much moral weight, this much energy, this much resource in the dead, if we're willing to negotiate, pause fighting, exhume graves, risk soldiers, and spend millions to bring back one corpse, why don't we invest as much in the living?
Oof, that hits hard. Because we don't.
We don't. It exposes a massive failure, a collective moral failure. Because here is the great irony. Both traditions, Judaism and Islam, actually prioritize life over death, unequivocally.
Let's look at the Jewish side first, the concept of pikuach nefesh.
Pikuach nefesh, the saving of a life.
Yeah.
In Jewish law, this is the trump card. It's the highest value. It overrides almost every other commandment in the Torah.
Almost everything.
Almost everything except for murder, idolatry, and certain sexual sins. You can break the Sabbath to save a life. You can eat non-kosher food if you're starving to save a life. You can drive a car on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, to get someone to the hospital.
And the Talmud has that famous saying,
Whoever saves one life, it is as if he saved an entire world. The value of single human life is infinite.
and in Islam. Is it the same?
It is almost identical. The Quran in Surah 5, verse 32 says, Whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely. And whoever saves one, it is as if he had saved mankind entirely.
The exact same idea. Saving one life is like saving all of humanity.
Precisely. And a teaching of the Prophet Muhammad says that the first question a person will be asked on the Day of Judgment is about bloodshed. Did you spill innocent blood? The sanctity of life is paramount.
So the theology in both faiths is crystal clear. Life comes first. The living take precedence over the dead.
The theology is clear, but the politics failed. The human beings failed. That's the tragedy Dr. Iqbal highlights. The return of Rangeli was a triumph of Kavod HaMedignity for the dead. We nailed that part. We fulfilled that obligation.
But the war itself, the 843 days of fighting.
There was a catastrophic failure of Pikuach nefesh, failure of Quran 5.32. We failed to save the thousands of worlds that were lost on both sides.
He mentions another concept from Judaism, Chiz Chel Emet. He translates it as true kindness.
Yes, in Jewish thought, caring for the dead, washing the body, burying it, mourning, is considered the truest kindness.
Why true?
Because the dead person can't pay you back. They can't write you a thank you note. They can't do you a favor later. It is pure altruism. You do it simply because it is the right thing to do for a fellow human being. It's an act of grace.
It's a beautiful concept, doing good with absolutely no expectation of reward.
It is. But the challenge Dr. Iqbal throws down at the end of his essay is this. Can we extend that true kindness to the living?
Can we act with that same selfless grace towards people who are still breathing?
Can we treat the living populations, the people in destroyed kibbutzim, the people in Khan Yunis, the refugees in Tents and Rafah, with that same level of sanctity we afford a corpse?
Because right now, it seems like we treat the dead with more reverence than the refugees.
That's the paradox, isn't it? We honor the body once the life has left it. We treat the empty vessel like a holy object. We move heaven and earth to bring it home. But while the life is in it, while the Tselem Elokim, the image of God, is still breathing inside it,
We allow it to be destroyed.
we allow it to starve. We allow it to be bombed. We fail it.
So where do we go from here? I mean, it feels hopeless. The clock has stopped. The body is home. The war. Well, the war shifts. It changes, but it doesn't end. Is there a lesson here? Dr. Iqbal suggests that we can actually use this shared theology of death to build peace.
He does. He refuses to end on a hopeless note, which I appreciate. He suggests that honoring the dead can be a bridge.
How does that work practically? Because it feels like a nice poetic idea, but how does it work in the real world between enemies?
Well, think about the universality of grief. It's the one thing everyone in this conflict shares. Every single person. Everyone has lost someone. Everyone has a story of a funeral, or the lack of a funeral.
Because it's a shared experience.
It's the most fundamental shared experience. Dr. Iqbal suggests that organizations on both sides could work together on the dignified treatment of the deceased.
Like a joint burial commission, something like that.
Exactly. Or a joint project on identifying remains from past conflicts. Or mapping cemeteries to ensure they're protected. It's a space where enemies can recognize each other's humanity without having to agree on borders or security arrangements yet.
You don't have to agree on who owns Jerusalem to agree that a mother should be able to bury her son.
That's it, right there. It's a starting point. It's a non-political, human-level task that builds a tiny reservoir of trust where none exists.
And he brings up some deep vocabulary from both traditions that could help. He says we use political language too much, and it fails us.
This is so important. We're stuck in the language of politics. Two-state solution, demilitarized zones, security envelopes. That's the language of policy papers. It's sterile.
It has no heart.
It has no heart. Dr. Iqbal says we need to use theological language because that's what speaks to the people's souls in this region. These are religious societies, whether we in the secular West like it or not.
So from the Islamic side, he lists a few key terms. The first is Rahma.
Rahma, mercy. It's one of the primary names of God in Islam, Ar-Rahman, the All-Merciful. To act with Rahma is to emulate God, but also Sulh, which means reconciliation. It's an active process of mending broken relationships.
And a very pragmatic concept he mentioned called maslah.
Maslasa. I find this one fascinating. It means public interest, or the common good. In Islamic jurisprudence, it allows for leaders to make treaties and compromises, even with enemies, if those treaties serve the greater good of the community and prevent further harm.
So making peace with an enemy isn't surrender.
It's maslaha. It's a wise and religiously sanctioned act to protect the community from further death and destruction. It gives a religious permission structure to stop fighting.
And the Quran verse he quotes, if they incline to peace, then incline to it.
Exactly. It's a command, not a suggestion. If the other side offers a hand, you are religiously obligated to take it.
And from the Jewish side, the key term is, of course, shalom.
Shalom. But not just as a passive greeting like hello or goodbye. The Psalms say, seek peace and pursue it. The Hebrew is Bekesh Shalom V'radfehu.
Pursue it.
The rabbis point out something fascinating about this verse. For most commandments, you wait for the opportunity to come to you. You wait for the Sabbath to arrive. You wait for a poor person to ask for charity. But peace,
You have to chase it.
you have to run after it. You have to hunt it down. It requires active, relentless effort. You can't just sit back and hope for peace to happen.
I love that image. Running after peace, not just waiting for a treaty to be signed by politicians.
And Dr. Iqbal makes a crucial distinction here, which is maybe the most important takeaway. He warns against conflating the religion with the nationalism
The trap we all fall into.
all the time. He says we have to be so careful to distinguish Jewish theology from Israeli government policy. They are not the same thing. And we have to distinguish Islamic theology from Hamas or Palestinian resistance. They're not the same thing.
Right. When we collapse those identities, we lose all the wisdom we've just been talking about.
We lose the wisdom. We just get tribalism. We just get my team versus your team. He points out that the diaspora communities in Miami, in London, in Toronto have a special role here.
Because they aren't on the front lines. They aren't in the bomb shelters or the refugee camps.
They have a bit of distance. They have the luxury of safety. And with that luxury comes a responsibility. They can model what it looks like to hold multiple truths at the same time.
To say, I believe in Israeli security and Palestinian dignity.
To say, I mourn the Jewish dead and the Muslim dead. If it can happen in a dialogue room in Miami, if those dog tags can, for a moment, become a point of connection instead of division, maybe eventually it can happen in Jerusalem.
It's about small acts of recognition.
Yes. Grand peace treaties often fail because there is no trust on the ground. They're imposed from the top down. But small acts, like returning a body, like helping to identify a grave, like sharing a meal, build trust from the bottom up.
Dr. Iqbal points to history. He says we have to remember this isn't impossible. Look at Northern Ireland.
Catholics and Protestants who slaughtered each other for generations.
That's right.
Now they share a government.
Look at South Africa. Black and white.
Apartheid seemed insurmountable.
Or France and Germany. They killed each other by the millions twice in a single century. It was unimaginable that they would ever be allies. Now they share a currency and an open border.
Reconciliation happens. It's a long, painful process, but it happens. And it always starts when you begin to see the other as human. And ironically, as we've seen today, seeing how the other mourns their dead is often the first most powerful step in seeing them as human.
When you see a mother crying over a grave, you don't see a terrorist or an oppressor.
You see a mother, and that changes everything.
So as we wrap up, let's go back to that image in the intro. The dog tags.
They're being retired now. The source mentions they are being collected, being placed in repositories and synagogues. They're becoming sacred objects of history, artifacts of a time of waiting. They're being taken off necks and put into archives.
And the clock in Tel Aviv has stopped. The digital numbers are dark. That constant ticking reminder is gone.
It has. The count is over. The vigil for Ranjivili is over.
So the question Dr. Iqbal leaves us with, the question for all of us is, what did we learn from these last 843 days? What did we learn from these dog tags?
Did we only learn how to recover the dead? Did we get really good at fulfilling Kavod Hamet? Did we perfect the art of being efficient undertakers after the fact?
Or did we learn how to protect the living? Did we learn anything about Pekwash Nefesh?
It's a haunting choice, because we can't do both, it seems.
It feels like we have to choose.
It does. The theology is there, the resources are there, the true kindness that Jesus Shelamet exists. We saw it in the exhumation, we saw it in the negotiation. The machinery of care exists. We just have to decide to apply it to the people who are still breathing.
The image of Randavili returning home. It's tragic, but it's also a reminder of what humans owe each other. That even in the midst of total war, we can pause for this one sacred act.
He was a defender, he was a son, and in the end, his return was a moment where the war stopped, just for a second, to honor a human life that was lost.
Dr. Iqbal's final words in the essay are beautiful. He says, "May the memory be a blessing, and may the wisdom of the dead teach the living how to stop the war."
That's the hope, isn't it? That the dead can teach us what we couldn't seem to learn on our own.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. It's a heavy one, I know, but I think an important one. As you go about your week, maybe think about that clock. Think about all the energy, all the focus, all the national will it took to stop it. And just think about where else that energy could go.
Take care, everyone.
See you next time.